At least she was wearing a hood so he couldn't see her ears turn red. I might be able to ask her about resurrection magic. Although we Ray both the same rank, she has been a team leader longer than me, so I thought I'd offer a greeting. Also, Jaldabaoth might have only been pretending to flee and could come back here. Those were my reasons. Is there a problem? No, if that's all, then I am sorry, I shouted. When she learned he was also taking precautions against Jaldabaoth, the prickly feeling disappeared. Anyone could have guessed why from our previous conversation. And if he is taking precautions against Jaldabaoth, does that mean he wants to protect me? So until then, do you mind telling me what happened here? Before that, I can bear to leave my comrades' bodies out there, so do you mind if we move over that way? Momon didn't mind at all, so they walked over. She had guessed they would have horrible burns, but the corpses were immaculate, as if the demon's fire burned up only people's souls. After closing their eyes and crossing their hands over their chests, Everly took shrouds of sleep out of her bag and wrapped Tia first. What are those? If you wrap a corpse in one of these magic items, it keeps them from turning undead or rotting. Supposedly it has some beneficial effect when you cast a resurrection spell too, I see, said Momon. He gave her a hand, wrapping Gagarin's large body when he noticed her struggling. He was so strong that lifting Gagarin looked easy. Standing before the two bodies wrapped in white cloth, Everly said a brief, silent prayer. The dead deserved respect, even if Lachius was going to resurrect them later. Thanks for your help. Don T mentioned it. I'd rather continue our discussion from before. Can you tell me what happened here? Everly readily consented and began to explain. She only knew why she had come and how Jaldabaoth had appeared partway through the battle with the bug maid. Momon and Nabe had been listening quietly, but when she said how the blue roses had beaten the maid to within inches of her life, their mood changed dramatically. Did you kill her? His tone was neutral, but she sensed an anger he wasn't able to completely conceal. That was confusing. She didn't understand why Momon would be mad if they killed Jaldabaoth's maid. For the time being, she decided to just explain the outcome as fast as she could. No, Jaldabaoth showed up before we could kill her. Oh, I see. His anger dissipated until there was none left. It was as if Everly had only misunderstood. Nabe was listening in silence. The anger in her hard eyes had not disappeared, but her attitude had been negative from the start. Everly wasn't even sure the anger was directed at her. Momon cleared his throat and asked, do you think it is possible that Jaldabaoth fought you seriously because you were trying to kill the maid? Everly realized why he'd gotten angry. It must have been because he suspected that they'd picked a fight with a neutral maid. This might have sparked the whole situation. They'd stepped on a tiger's tail when there had been no need to do such a thing. An adventurer was always supposed to avoid unnecessary combat. If a member of the highest rank didn't understand that they risked making adamantite rank adventurers, including Momon, look bad, that must be what he is trying to say. But from Everly's perspective, things weren't how he described them. Jaldabaoth said he was going to envelop part of the royal capital in flames. There is no way any maid of his could be a decent person. She thought her comrades were right to fight her. She would insist on that. That maid was stronger than Gagarin and Tia, so they wouldn't have fought her without a reason. Their choice to engage had to have been the right one. Everly was unconsciously revealing her raw feelings in her argument, and Momon remained silent. Behind a mask, behind a closed helmet, they couldn't see each other's eyes, but Everly was sure their gazes were clashing. Momon first looked away. I see what you're saying. Sorry. He bowed his head slightly. This flustered Everly. She couldn't back down, so she had nearly started a fight, but it wasn't right to have the man who saved her life bowing to her. Oh, please raise your head. You're so wonderful, you don't niarg. Upon realizing what she was saying, she yelped in confusion. Certainly, Momon was a wonderful person, but in this context, wonderful wasn't the right word to use. Everly shrieked in her head. How can I help it? He was so cool. Shouldn't I be allowed to feel like a girl for the first time in a few hundred years? He is so strong, yes. He is a warrior who is stronger and more wonderful than me, so of course. Everly watched him with girlish interest. If he seemed to be blushing, she might still be able to hold out hope. If not, chances were slim. Everly's body had stopped developing around the age of 12. For that reason, she didn't have most of the things men desired. It was difficult to both arouse desire in them or get them to satisfy hers. Of course, a certain rare subset found her extremely appealing, but they really were rather uncommon. Judging by Nabe, who was next to Momon, she guessed he was not one of them. Eveline mustered the courage to glance at him, but when she looked, Momon and Nabe were standing shoulder to shoulder looking up at the night sky. At first she had no idea what they were doing, but then she remembered her strange yelp from a moment ago. It dawned on her. Her shout had put them on guard. That's not what it was about. She felt so pathetic she nearly started to cry. Maybe it was just your imagination. I don't see anything, Momon said, having scanned the night sky. Why yes, it must have been. My apologies. Oh, don't worry about it. I'd rather have it be your imagination than have the enemy catch me unaware, he answered nonchalantly. With Nabe's help, he had sheathed one of his huge swords. He held the other to stay on guard. Eveline didn't have words for his kindness. Just then, something lit up at the edge of her vision. It wasn't the white light of magic, but the vermilion of a raging fire. Mr. Momon, look over there. Both of them saw the red glow as Nabe spoke. Eveline's eyes widened under her mask. She knew where those flames were coming from. What is that? The curling crimson flames blazed up to the heavens. They had to have been easily over 100 feet tall. How far they stretched was impossible to gauge, but it was definitely more than a few hundred yards. The flames rose like a flickering veil and stretched like a sash to completely enclose one area of the capital. In shock, Eveline observed this phenomenon for the first time in her life. A quiet male voice reached her ears. The fire of Gehenna, drawn by his question, she turned toward Momon. What in the world is that? Do you know something about that huge wall of fire, Sir Momon? Momon jumped. He answered with much less confidence than his murmur would have led one to expect. Oh no, I don't know for sure. Can I tell you once I have confirmation? Of course, that's fine, but I need to talk to Nabe for a moment. Please excuse me. Can I go with you? No, it's just a quick consultation between teammates. I'd rather you didn't, of course. Embarrassed to have asked a question with such an obvious answer, her eyes roved around. They found the woman called Beautiful Princess. The grin on her pretty face appeared to be a triumphant one. Maybe it was just her imagination, but maybe it wasn't. Any woman given special treatment by an ultra first-class man would feel superior to members of the same sex. Eveline couldn't suppress the strange emotion that appeared in her heart. It was the flame of an uncomfortable anger jealousy. Not only is he strong, he possesses knowledge. I am never going to meet another man like this. Some say that human women had a tendency to be attracted to power. Because they'd been continuously exposed to powerful external threats, their racial preservation instincts kicked in. They desired to marry a strong man, bear children, and live under his protection. Of course, that wasn't to say that all women chose their men in the same way. Personality and appearance, all sorts of things fostered love. Still, there were signs that this tendency was pronounced. Eveline had always scorned women like that. Were they weak, needing someone to protect them? How incredibly foolish. All you have to do is get strong enough that you don't need protection. At least that's what she thought she believed. If she let this man get away, would she ever find someone who could fulfill her? Eveline was immortal, so there was no doubt that Momon would grow old and die before her. And no matter how hard she tried, she probably wouldn't be able to have his children. She couldn't avoid being alone again in a few decades, but she thought for once in her life, she'd like to try living as a woman. It wouldn't be so bad if someone else had his kids. She wouldn't grumble about a lover or two if he gave her the most affection. Then please wait just a minute. Apologies, Miss Eveline. Oh, sorry, I may have been overthinking it. I am sure there are some things you need to decide as a team. I'll wait here. In truth, she didn't want to put the slightest distance between herself and Momon. She didn't want to leave him alone with that beautiful woman, against whom she didn't stand a chance. But there was no way she could say those things. Nobody liked an overly persistent woman. A man who felt like someone was trying to tie him down would flee. She recalled conversations she'd heard in bars. At the time, she'd thought they had nothing to do with her and gotten up from her seat with a scoff. Dang, so I guess any tidbit of knowledge can be put to some use. If only I had been paying proper attention back then. I wonder if I have time to learn a woman's ways, Eveline thought, as she followed the withdrawing pair with her eyes. She knew it wasn't what she should be thinking about under these circumstances, But even if she tried to consider the issue at hand, she didn't have enough information, so she only went in circles. Either way, she would be plunging into a battle in a few hours. She might die, so she could probably relax a bit and seriously consider this nonsense. Was this a fait accompli? She wasn't sure how enticing she could be with a body that couldn't bear children, but it was worth a shot. She sighed. Shall we beat Jaldabaoth and build a future? Everlai declared war on Jaldabaoth. She was sure he was behind that blazing wall of fire. In her head, she thought Sir Momon was probably the only one who could defeat him, so she would be beside him. And if that maid showed up again, she would slay her. She may not look it, but she was the cursed one they called Nation Breaker. Don't underestimate her, Jaldabaoth. She probably can hear us here, right? I think it would be nearly impossible to listen in at this distance. Still, I guess we should take precautions. Aints activated an item he had bought. It would prevent them from being overheard. He'd been saving it because it was single use, but now he had no choice. So, Nabe. I have a fairly good idea of what his plan is. However, the more precise a machine is, the more danger there is of the whole thing breaking if one gear gets messed up. That goes for plans as well. I want to avoid misinterpreting something and ruining everything by assuming I know what's going on and acting without confirmation. You understand, right? I see. I'd expect nothing less from you, Supreme One. Aints returned Nabral's heartfelt praise with a confident nod befitting a ruler, as if to say he had everything in the palm of his hand. I wish. In his head, he was practically drowning in a waterfall of cold sweat. How was he supposed to know what Demiurge was up to? He had appeared earlier only because he noticed combat breaking out in the capital. He thought, it's my first battle in the royal capital, so I'll make a cool entrance. The shock upon realizing he was fighting Demiurge was so great that he nearly lost his cool to the point where he had to be automatically evened out by the special psychological affinity the undead naturally possessed. Then, when he figured they were fighting the Eight Fingers as ordered, it was actually some adamantite rank adventurers. He really couldn't understand. He had half given up trying to think about it. In his position, his comments just now were a bad move. Aints was well aware that pretending to know things was dangerous. Sometimes it was safer to just reveal one's ignorance, but Aints was a respected ruler. He needed to display wisdom befitting the supreme beings. This demonstrated they were worthy of reverence. If a superior, even at company president level, was too ignorant, it was natural they would lose the trust of subordinates. And so, after frantically spinning his non-existent brain's gears until they nearly melted, he had come up with that tired excuse. It was unclear if Nabral was just obedient or his logic was more convincing than he thought. She had respect in her eyes. Aints pretended to give her an order, though it was really asking her a favor. Yes. So in order to make Demiurge's plan a success, get in touch with him. The reason I am not is because people are watching, by which I mean that woman. And also I can use magic in this form. Everlai is observing us so closely. I don't know for sure, but she must be suspicious of me. Really? I think not. I am pretty sure it is something else she is feeling. At this remark, Aints glanced at her out of the corner of his eye so as not to appear suspicious. Do you really think so? I know her thoughts inside out. I knew it was a fatal error to get angry back there. Maybe I should have just killed her. There was no answer. All Aints had felt when he heard they beaten Entoma to within inches of her life was rage. As always, the intense emotion was immediately suppressed. Even so, for a moment, he was consumed by seething anger. It was a miracle he hadn't smashed the sword he'd been carrying into the top of Everlai's head. The reason he'd been able to hold back his fury and urge to kill her was that, based on the conversation they had, he had judged that the drawbacks of killing her would be just too great. He had a chance to become connected with someone who could use resurrection magic, a very good person to know. It would have been a waste to throw that away. He had grown a bit and learned some patience, he reflected. If he hadn't had the experience of flying off the handle when Sholtia was brainwashed, he probably would have killed Everlai without even considering the drawbacks. The inhabitants of the great tomb of Nazarick, the NPCs created by the supreme beings, were treasures Aints had to protect. It would be unforgivable if they were tarnished. His ability to think and prioritize had to have been due to his maturation. Ain't sensed that he was becoming more capable as he built up experience. His illusion face grinned between his closed helmet and the rubber mask he was wearing for extra insurance. If he kept improving at this rate, he would definitely become a ruler worthy of the great tomb of Nazarick. At least, that's what he hoped. Until then, he had to avoid disappointing them or making any big mistakes. This was so intense. Oh. I expect nothing less from you, Lord Aints, so you can see through that lady completely. Truly, you have eyes befitting the enthroned. Cut the flattery, Narbarrel. I've only put in the natural amount of thought considering the mistakes I've made. He waved an embarrassed hand. Then in a booming, at least, he hoped it was booming voice, he gave her orders. Time for action, Narbarrel. Find out all the plans without delay and inform me. Also, please tell him that I am guessing, but there is a good chance I will be the one to handle the incident Jaldabaoth causes. Narbarrel bowed and cast a spell. Aints did a fist pump in his head. What he said to Narbarrel earlier wasn't a lie. Right now he couldn't use magic due to perfect warrior, so it was only natural that she would message Demiurge. But he had one other unstated reason. Now that he pretended he understood Demiurge's entire plan, he needed to avoid contact with the intelligent Demiurge as much as possible, so his comprehension couldn't be doubted. There was a risk that due to turning everything into a game of telephone with Narbarrel, some of the information he received would be distorted. But that was a small risk compared to Aints being deemed unfit to rule the great tomb of Nazarick. Aints slowly approached Everly. He figured he needed to distract her while Narbarrel was talking to Demiurge. Sheesh, how do I explain this? And why is this kid so powerful? I wonder what she looks like underneath that mask. 25 Late Fire Moon, September 12:47 a.m. in one corner of the castle, in a room that wasn't so big, brightly lit despite it being the middle of the night. A large number of men and women had gathered. They were each equipped, but there was no standard gear set. They'd been urgently assembled here, all the adventurers of the kingdom. Some were high-ranking, with orichalcum and mithril plates. Others were low-ranking, with iron and copper plates, a true sweeping mobilization. The high-ranking adventurers had already deduced they'd been convened to handle the ongoing situation in the capital. They'd been summoned to an inner part of the castle, where people of indefinite status were usually not allowed to go. And from the boy wearing white full-plate armor standing at attention in the corner, they could guess who the client was. A tiny minority of them had a vague idea of who the man standing next to him was, from his adventurer-like vibes and katana. When the door opened, and a group of women with only one man among them appeared, a murmur went through the crowd. They were all big names, recognizable by every adventurer in the kingdom. At the head of the line stood the leader of the adamantite rank team, the Blue Roses, Lachius Alvine Dale Aindra. Next was the Golden Princess, Renna, then the head of the Capital S Adventurers Guild, then from the Blue Roses, Everly and one of the twins. Bringing up the rear was the Kingdom's strongest warrior, Gaze of Stronoff. The group stood before the crowd. The boy in white armor unrolled a large piece of paper and hung it on the wall behind them. It was a detailed map of the capital. The first to speak was a woman around 40 years old. She was a former mithril rank adventurer, and her eyes were filled with vigor. First, I'd like to thank you all for gathering here to confront this crisis. She scanned the room. It was full of quiet, serious-looking adventurers, and then she spoke again. Under normal circumstances, the Adventurers Guild does not permit intervening in matters of the state. Her gaze rested momentarily on the members of the Blue Roses, but she didn't say anything. Her eyes imparted just as much as her mouth could have, but this case was an exception. We've decided the Adventurers Guild will offer its full support to the kingdom in order to resolve the incident as quickly as possible. The princess will explain the details of the operation. Please listen carefully. The princess stepped slowly forward, accompanied by the members of the Blue Roses and Gaze of Stronoff on either side. My name is Renna Thayea Chardalan Ryle Vaself. Thank you for gathering here to confront this crisis. She bobbed her head. Several adventurers sighed in admiration of her dainty elegance. Usually, I would express my gratitude at greater length, but there's no time, so I'll head straight into the explanation. Today in the early dawn, A fiery barrier enclosed a part of the capital. She gestured with a finger to circle a large area in the northeast on the map. In this area, I believe everyone here has already seen the Wall of Flames, which is over 100 feet tall. Most of the adventurers nodded, and a few looked out the windows. The flames weren't visible from inside the castle walls, but a red glow had been cast on part of the sky. The fire is similar to an illusion in some ways. For instance, it doesn't seem to harm those who come into contact with it.